And getting Instagram launched. Okay, awesome. We are live now. Welcome everyone. We're doing another round of MENding discussions on Wednesdays, or what's known on Trent Radio as Man Cave Confessional, happening every Tuesday from 11:30 on Trent Radio. Super pumped. Today I have Tokoni. Welcome to the MENding discussions.
Hey, how are you?
Doing well. I'm definitely enjoying the hot weather to a certain extent, but you know.
It's getting hot.
It is.
Really, really hot.
Now, I know something about you. You're actually an international student at Trent University, and you're from Nigeria.
Yeah, I am.
And I know you always complained about our Canadian winter. So how are you dealing right now with the Canadian summer?
To be honest, like for most people, it's like, oh, this is really hot. This is really hot. I don't know, it's hot, but I'm sort of, I wouldn't say I'm used to it, but like it doesn't bug me as much as it bugs everybody else. Like I feel like this is kind of, it's almost like my terrain. Like this is what, like the heat is, it's nothing to me. It's the cold that bothers me a lot. Like I don't like the cold. I love being cold, but like Canadian winter is something else. Like it's just different.
Yeah. Okay, so you're at Trent. How did you come across our MENding program?
Okay, for sure. So how I think I first came across MENding. It was one of the clubs in Groups Day. So I was just walking around trying to look for things I might be interested in. And I walked around like I guess like the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center. And I'm not sure, I feel like I met you that day, or did I? Am I remembering this right? But I feel
It would
like
have been me or Lisa that you would have met.
And I think you handed me I think it was you, and you handed me the little sewing case, and it said like MENding on it, and I was like, at first I was thinking like, why is she giving me a sewing case? Like, what am I supposed to do with it? And then I see like the thing on it, the MENding program, and like, oh, like, um, I'm like, yeah, like there's like a MENding program. And you gave me a little like informational session about it. And you also mentioned the fact that there is one for like students and like I guess like high schoolers and stuff like that. This young men leading change, and I was like, wait, that's really interesting. That's something I was actually thinking of like starting, like what MENding is about, like building up like just conversating with guys and just helping to end gender-based violence. So I feel like it was a volunteer organization. It's a nonprofit that I actually wanted to start by myself, how to educate young boys on how to, be respectful to women and to just everybody and people around them. And I just didn't have the resources. So I was like, whoa, these people have the resources. They have the program all set up. So I was like, yeah, this is something I'm interested in definitely being a part of.
So yeah, we've got two programs. We've got MENding and Young Men Leading Change, and a lot of what you learned in MENding we've brought to Young Men Leading Change. I guess we can just briefly talk about, what is the difference between the Young Men Leading Change program versus the MENding program?
I guess I'll start by saying like it's basically the same thing, but MENding is mostly, I feel like MENding it's like, if I could say it like this, MENding is like the senior version of Young Men Leading Change. With Young Men Leading Change, it's mostly focusing on young boys who are in high school and even young boys who are in high school and probably like high school and below, trying to just have a conversation that most people don't usually like speak to them about consent, about what is gender-based violence, just really but it's like the ground level, like the framework for it for these young boys. And then MENding is sort of like university level, post-secondary level, and even like you know, career people who like grown men, you know, they educate themselves in these conversations, and they have the opportunity to have conversations they never got to have when they were in high school or they were younger. But the difference between MENding, I feel like one major difference between MENding and Young Men Leading Change is Young Men Leading Change is mostly for newcomer young boys to give them the space and the opportunity, because I find in a country like Canada, men, like guys like me, don't usually have a safe space where we could have these conversations, right? There's usually it's usually these spaces are usually what's the word? It's usually dominated by white cisgender men, right? So it gives newcomer men and newcomer like men the chance to have a safe space where we can conversate and we can have these discussions with our voice and our opinions being heard. I feel like that's the major difference between Young Men Leading Change and I guess like MENding, because I think MENding is basically for everyone, you know. I don't know if I got that right.
No, yeah, for sure. Hit it right on the nail, right on the head. Is Young Men Leading Change is a space for, I guess, more youth. The MENding, which is kind of like everyone, and then Young Men Leading Change holds that space for newcomer racialized young men, in a space that typically isn't created for them to talk about this. So you did the MENding program. What really stood out to you throughout that program?
I'm gonna be honest, a lot of things stood out to me, but I think the one thing that stood out to me, I'd say, with the MENding program was the fact that it was a video we watched with it was a video we watched. I can't remember. It was a video we watched with I can't remember. He was the same guy. He was on the masculine video.
Is it Jackson? Not Jackson Katz, was it?
I think it's that guy,
Okay, yeah.
right?
Like
He says, yeah, it was a TED talk he did, and it was really, it was crazy because it was the first time that he exposed that to me, that there's no way that the problem of gender-based violence can be, like, I feel like it's something I knew that, and it's not word for word, but he said there's no way the problem can be fixed without the people who are it's majorly involved in, if they can't be brought into the conversation, right? So a lot of people think that gender-based violence, rape and stuff like that, it's a female problem, right? It's a women problem. And he was like, it is a male problem. It's like, it's a man problem, because um, men unfortunately are mostly, in most cases, in most cases, are the oppressors, right? Are the people who, the assaulters. And if they're not brought into the conversation, then how do we expect to end gender-based violence if the people it mostly concerns are not in the room? And I felt like I feel like it's something I knew, but the way he said it, it just made all the more sense to me. As well as the lady who first coined the term intersectionality. I think that's very, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That's sort of, it's a major part of what we're doing. And it's a major, like, it just breaks things down. It, you know, it talks about all the different experiences that a person can have, right? And how they all intersect. I think that's a major part of the work that we're doing. So those are the things that stood out for me.
Awesome. And so was there any part of MENding that really impacted kind of your everyday life?
For sure. I think it was I would say like the real life scenarios that we had, the practice of the real life scenarios that we had, and when we went around discussing how these scenarios could be a problem. I feel like sometimes, to be really honest with you, sometimes, right, you get around specific, like you get around a specific crowd and you're a different way, right? And sometimes when you're in another crowd, you're a different type of way, you're a different type of person, right? So it's almost like your brain automatically just leaves out what it needs and what it doesn't need, right? And just gives you what you need in that moment, right? So I think for me, when we discussed those scenarios that we did in MENding, and those scenarios were very realistic. There are some things that I have actually seen before and I've actually um, sort of heard about. These are real life experiences. I feel like it sort of gave me a wake up call to see that I'll like it sort of made me feel like I needed to be more intentional with the way I I behaved around a specific type of people, right? I need to be more intentional. I need to be more aware and self-aware that I'm not going with the crowd and doing what everybody else is doing, which could be wrong in those scenarios. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. Like in a party scene, how you, rather than speaking up, you would, if somebody's getting harmed, be it a man or a woman, rather than speaking up because maybe the people around are your friends, you would much rather just, step back when you should be standing up and acting, you know? So that was like the one thing that actually was impactful in my life,
When
was
you
just
say
being
that,
intentional.
yeah, when you say that you want to be intentional, what does being intentional mean to you?
Yeah, okay, so it's like, for me, being intentional is like, I would say like in these scenarios, when I want to be intentional, it would not be just like trying to be a hero, right? It's not trying to be a hero in the situation, but trying to do like what's right. And at the same time, right, when you be a hero, sometimes when you try to be a hero, sometimes you forget that your intention might have been right, but the impact that it had was, it didn't impact people or impact the situation the way you wanted it to, right? So I think that's what I mean by being intentional. Like you have to look at intent versus impact. I know it's hard to do it in that scenario, but it's sort of just mentally preparing yourself and just thinking about it. And when you speak to people and when you're in a situation, it's sort of, you first think about what is the thing that I can do or the thing that I can say that will make the person who is being attacked or not feeling safe. What is the first thing that I can do that or say that will make them feel comfortable, that will make them feel safe, that will make them feel, that's all you should really, I feel like you should be thinking about, as opposed to, I want to look good. I want to look like the hero. I want to be the guy who does the right thing. You know, I don't know if that answered your question.
No, for sure. So for you, what is the difference between being a hero and doing the right thing versus thinking about your impacts? I feel like we all want to be the hero in some capacity, and I would go even out of my way to say that men have the ability to want to be the hero more opportunities to take on that, be the hero mentality. When we look at like the space that a man takes up when he uses his voice, people listen. And
Hmm.
I was speaking to volunteers and people who work with the Kawartha Sexual Assault Center as female
Hmm.
identified folk, maybe their voices aren't heard as much. So back to the question, what is the difference between, that being a hero mentality versus thinking about the impacts? What are kind of those differences?
That is an interesting question, and I'm just go. I would just go with something I actually seen on Instagram the other day, and I thought was very. I can't really remember the specifics of who it was about, but I know it was written by somebody who is trying to sort of break down that sort of savior mentality that a lot of people have in terms of allyship and in terms of like even with Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. So and indigenous, like indigenous matters. And I feel like it really struck me, and I feel like it might be able to help me answer this question. So I feel like the most important, like the difference between being a savior and or being a hero and actually, looking at your intent versus impact is, which is one of the things we do discuss in Young Men Leading Change as well as MENding. And I think the difference is I think a major part of it is consultation, right? The people you're trying to help, you're trying to be a part of the solution of the struggles and the issues that they experience in life, right? I think a major part is consulting. Have you consulted them? Have you spoken with them to know their actual needs, right? To know if, like, if in a scenario, let's say a party scenario. I keep bringing up a party scenario because I go to a few, like, when things were open, I used to
Yeah.
go to a few
I
parties.
feel
I
like
used to see a lot of
you're
things.
missing it.
Yeah, I do miss it. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. I actually do miss it. Um, but I feel like in a party scenario, it's it's like the one thing that separates a hero from someone who's actually trying to, be intentional with what they're trying to do is, like, does that person, what you've done, right, to intervene, has it made the person feel any safer or any better,
Mm.
right? So I feel like consultation is a major part, because a lot of people, they see a cause, and they believe in the cause, and they believe in what it's about, and they believe that they have the ability and the capability to be a part of this cause, and to ride for the cause.
Mm.
And I'm talking, like, not just gender-based violence, Black Lives Matter, um, indigenous indigenous protest, um and a whole bunch of other things, right? And a lot of injustice. They feel like they can be a part of the cause because they believe that justice, that, people shouldn't be treated the way they're treated. But then they sort of it's easy to venture into that savior mentality where you're like, okay, I'm the one who can be the one. I can be the savior. I can do this and say that and speak out.
Mm-hmm.
You never know if what you're doing is actually really helping the cause, right? So are you helping the cause, or are you helping yourself feel better, you know? And as a guy, I recognize that there's a chance that savior, it's easy for me to fall into that savior mentality where I would feel like I'm that guy who's, doing things to end gender-based violence. I can save women, but I have to realize that I can't save, like, I'm not here to save women.
Mm.
I'm not here to drown their voice with my voice and be the face or be the face of this movement. I can't be the face of this woman because, it's not my space. I'm here to be an ally, right? So you have to be sort of intentional with that. Like, am I helping the cause, or am I helping myself? Right? Feel better for being a guy who, you know, population of these situations where the man is the assailant, right? So am I trying to feel better about myself, or am I trying to actually be an ally and be a sort of, you know,
Mm-hmm.
help, you know? I don't know if that makes that makes sense. I just went off on a tangent.
No,
I don't know if that makes sense.
no, definitely. It's like that performative allyship, right? Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I learned about gender-based violence, and so now I'm going to go out there and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to help women. I'm going to save women from this
Mm-hmm.
gender-based violence, and we're going to stop this. And first thing, it's like it's gender-based violence is a systemic issue. It's not just about
Mm-hmm.
women. It's also
Mm-hmm.
providing a space for men to help themselves. I think that there's a lot of messages that men receive in the media, and I know that there's been a lot of uh, uh, instances and issues around gender-based violence that even you've come across and what you've seen on the media as well.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, I have I seen I can't I was trying to actually look for her name right before this call, but I can't remember her name. But it was a recent incident. It was a Nigerian girl in the States, and she used to I think it's all I can't remember her name, but it was a girl who she used to go to every Black Lives Matter protest. She used to, you know, she used to lead even some of the protests, but then it was sort of like and she got basically she went missing, right? She had problems with her family, but even while she was still home and she was homeless, even while she was still homeless, she still showed up for the cause. So I guess like in when I read her story in that moment, it sort of made me feel like a lot of people were even talking about it. They were like, "Oh, she showed up for the cause. She showed up for a lot of things, but nobody was there to show up for her because she actually, the day it happened to her, she was assaulted by some random guy, and the day that she tweeted the day it happened, she tweeted about it. She literally was strong enough and bold enough to come out and tweet about it, and nobody really reached out to her to say, hey, where are you? I'm gonna come get you. I'm gonna come, like, where are you? Are you okay? Nobody, until I think the same guy who uh, assaulted her killed her. So it's like, what the hell, right? Like, what the hell?
Hmm.
And it's like, I just felt like I was mad at the fact that nothing was done for her, even after she'd done so much for her community, even while she was homeless. And I feel like at some point, I'm not sure if I have the story accurately, but I think that's generally what happened.
Hmm.
It was, yeah, yeah, like it was Oluwatoyin Salau. Yeah, that
What
was her name.
Lucas on our Facebook just said that, yeah, that
Hmm.
story is really upsetting.
It is so upsetting. It
And
is so upsetting.
it just really highlights your point of intersectionality, right? Like, you're
Hmm.
there for Black Lives Matter, but yet you're a victim of sexual violence and femicide, right? So these,
Hmm. Hmm.
and this is why it is so difficult to research sexual violence, is because sexual violence is not in a test tube. It's an entire system. It's an entire system of oppression. It's an entire system of patriarchy, of misogyny, of not only how we treat women, but how we treat able-bodied folks versus people with a disability, how we treat
Sure.
racialized folk, how we treat
Sure.
people with lower socioeconomic status. Like, it's an intersecting um,
Sure.
system. Lucas
Hmm.
was also saying on our Facebook, I love what you're saying about having a savior complex. Tokoni, Alicia's right. It's about allowing people to help themselves.
I definitely feel that, Lucas. It's so important because I feel like it's so easy to fall into the savior complex. Like it's so
To
easy.
to change your Facebook photo to black, and then
Yeah, yeah,
3 weeks later be having, why are we still protesting posts and stuff
yeah,
like that.
yeah. And that I just post a black on Instagram and hashtag Blackout Tuesday, and on Thursday, more hashtag Blackout Tuesdays. It's you're still going about the way everything's meant to be, and you're still wondering, okay, so we posted about it, we've spoken about it. I just want my Instagram to go back to the way it was. I just want my Facebook to go back the way it was. I don't really want to talk about it or conversate about it anymore.
Mhm,
You know, really interesting.
mhm,
Really interesting thing.
mhm.
Yeah.
Why do you think these experiences aren't being brought to the mainstream enough? Why do you think there's such a reluctancy to talk about the intersections of racism and sexual violence and gender-based violence? Why do you think that it's still happening?
Uh, I'm gonna take a shot in the dark and say I feel like a lot of people feel like I feel like there are two reasons. A lot of people feel like the first reason is a lot of people feel like these issues are not connected. That some of these issues are not connected in any way. They don't see how racism could be connected to gender-based violence in any way, right? So I feel for them, they think they're two separate issues, and they're two separate types of people that do those things,
Or that it doesn't happen,
or
right?
it doesn't happen, or
We
it
live in
doesn't exist.
Canada. We don't have issues with racism.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Violence is something that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because for them, they're like, I don't see it, so it doesn't happen.
Literally,
I don't.
of this province said that, well, I don't see racism, and people in my cabinet haven't seen racism, so I don't know. I don't know anything about it. But yet his entire campaign is about for the people. What people? You don't even think that racism is prevalent in this country, in Ontario, in Toronto.
I don't even know. I heard about that. I see that on the news, and I don't know. I had no. My only reaction was to shake my head because I don't know. Like, obviously you've not seen it. Obviously nobody on your cabinet has seen it because they're all white. They're all white, So obviously you don't see racism because it's not your life experience. Some people it's their life. Like, it's literally all they see every day. You walk into, you never had to experience going to a grocery store, going to Freshco, and the security guard is following you around. You came to a grocery shop and you came to spend some money. You didn't come to steal, but you're being followed around the grocery store because they think you're here to steal.
Based on one factor, which is your skin.
My skin, your skin tone, your skin color. So it's like, obviously you don't see racism because.
Sorry, I think you just put your.
There you go. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And then I think my second reason would be that I feel like the media, a lot of people rely on the media so heavily, and it's sort of, they rely on the media, forgetting that the media is also a business, and those businesses want to make money. So whatever it takes for them to make money and to have the views that they need, they'll push whatever agenda they need to push for and change the narrative as much and twist the narrative as much as they can, just so they can make money. So I feel like if you rely heavily on the media, obviously you're going to say, yeah, racism is a liberalist view. It's not, yeah, it doesn't exist. I watched a video of some guy and a lady that were painting over I don't know if you've seen that. They were painting over yeah, and he was like, oh, it's a liberal man's agenda he's pushing. It. Racism does not exist. It's a liberalist view, blah blah blah. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and blah blah blah. What are you talking about? I was like, what is this guy? Obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. He's heavily misinformed because he must be confused, and he relies on Fox News and CNN and all the other news to give him his information. Not to say that those are not reliable sources of information, but he just relies on them so heavily he can't really form his own opinions. And if it does form his opinion, it's probably that racism doesn't exist.
Yeah, we talk about Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves, and nowadays we may not have such overt forms of racism like having a mass of Black slaves, but when you think about the criminal justice system and that business was created, well, it was created once they abolished slavery. And so making things illegal and looking at the percentage of Black and Indigenous and people of color that are in jails, yeah, I think there was a really great documentary on Netflix. I forget what amendment it is that was abolish slavery. I can't remember. It was like the fifth, maybe. I don't know. That documentary on Netflix, I highly suggest to take a look at it. And
I'll definitely check it out.
yeah, that all these issues intersect, and that's why it's so hard to research them and study them, because like it's, yeah. And so, you know, we're talking about performative allyship. Why do we think, or why do you think it's so hard to be an ally and support this cause, whether it be anti-racism or speaking out against gender-based sexual violence? What do you think? Why do you think allyship is hard? Being a man talking about sexual violence.
I feel like a major part of it would be, as a guy, I feel like one thing that could hold me back and could sort of hinder, me from being a good ally could be, and can cause me to do too much, even more than I should, is guilt. I feel like guilt it's a feeling, and a negative feeling that doesn't provide the proper feel for allyship, for a good allyship. I don't know if that makes sense. Because when it's guilt that's causing you to take up the cause and want to be a part of the solution for the cause, then I don't know, I just feel like it's not straight from the heart, right? You did not on your own decide that this is wrong, and I want to be a true part of the solution, and I want to honestly speak with those that it affects, and know the experiences and understand the experiences, and then become and find out ways that I can help the experience, right? But if it's fueled by guilt, I would most likely go on the internet and sort of look for some massive some initiative, or come up with some sort of innovation that would help the cause, or find the quickest way to just release my guilt, right? Whether it's financial, right? Donating to this cause is the quickest way that I'll feel like, okay, I've done something for this cause, right? I've donated my hard-earned money for this cause, so I don't feel any guilt, right? So I feel like it's guilt that sort of stands in the way, right?
Yeah. Two things. Lucas corrected me. It was the 13th Amendment. My apologies.
13th Amendment. Boom.
Couple
Yeah.
off.
I was gonna say 15th. I don't really know.
Yeah. And I was listening to an Indigenous elder at Nogojuan Friendship Center, and there was a white person there talking about the guilt of the harm that we've caused to Indigenous communities across Canada. And this Indigenous elder was like, stop, recognize your guilt, recognize it, it's there, but do something with it. And keep that guilt is going to be a driving force behind your passion for helping people, for healing people, for creating more thriving communities. Don't dismiss this guilt by a quick financial donation, or don't use that guilt as a way to shut down. Use that guilt as a power source, as something to make an active change. And when we hear stats like 97% of men are the perpetrators of sexual violence, you're gonna either deny or feel guilty, maybe shut down.
Most definitely. And yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, to be honest, right? When you've lived your life feeling like, as a guy, when you lived your life feeling like, oh yeah, I'm a decent person, I'm an okay person, I don't cause harm to people. not knowing that, you know, just with the things you've grown up believing that a guy is supposed to be and what a guy is supposed to do, you may have caused harm to somebody. So when you're exposed to this thing, right? When you're exposed to the fact that through your prejudice or your ways of thinking, or like, you know, the things you believed growing up, when you sort of realize that all that has possibly harmed people, it's a hard pill to swallow, for sure.
And sometimes it may not even be overt acts that you're doing, right?
Most definitely, most
The fact
definitely.
that you're there and you encourage the behavior via laughing, via not saying anything, that can be
Silence.
really tough to think about, that you're part of the problem, but you can easily be part of the solution.
That's so heavy. That's really heavy. You know.
Patrick said on our Facebook, one thing I keep hearing is that systemic racism doesn't exist currently because we don't have the laws that specifically target and undermine minorities anymore. I think laws that target minorities are the only measure. I don't think that laws that target minorities are the only measure of systemic racism. Yeah, just because there's not a law saying that you shouldn't have slaves, that we are now allowed to have interracial marriages, doesn't mean that systemic racism doesn't exist. I think I said
hmm
that.
Most definitely, most definitely. It's under systemic racism. It's an umbrella that encompasses so many. I can't even begin to I can't even begin to like break it all down. If not, we'll probably be here for a long time. But it encompasses so many things, right? Tokenism, um, you know, just even like what I said, like following people around the store just because of predisposed like stereotypes, because of stereotypes. This type of person is this way, right? Just things like that. It's a lot, right? There's a lot, and you know it definitely exists. I can tell you for sure, it definitely exists. You can, wherever that person is, tell them to ask their friends, right? Their friends who are black, who are indigenous, who are BIPOC, they have BIPOC friends, right? Ask any of them, right? They would tell you the things they've experienced, right? And not because, and they'll let you know that there is no law that said, you know, oh, because like there's no law that says don't follow a person around the store because they look a certain skin color, right? The law is probably going to say something like don't, yeah, if stealing is a crime, right? But the person did not come in there with the intention to steal, right? So why should they be followed around the store with the mindset that they're here to steal because of their skin color, right? So it's a, you know, I don't know what to say, to be honest. I don't really know what to.
It kind of reminds me of that continuum of harm where it's the little things, those microaggressions that contribute to systemic racism,
Mhm,
where we see
mhm,
people being BIPOC, being a woman, being trans, what have you. It all contributes. So catcalling and laughing at that catcalling can then lead to more, if we're doing catcalling in public, who knows what people are
mhm,
going to be doing in private, right? And if
mhm,
catcalling and saying degrading things at people, if they think that's
mhm.
okay in public, what do they think is going to be okay in private?
Most definitely, most definitely. And um, I just wanted to say, like, I feel like even with the topic of systemic racism and systemic oppression and stuff like that, I feel like it's definitely like it starts with the little things, right? It's a generational thing. I feel like it's sort of what are we teaching like the next generation? What are we telling them? I feel like that's the major purpose of like mending and young men leading change and all the things that we're doing. And, you know, it's sort of like what are we teaching the next generation to think it's okay, right? So it's a generational thing. If a person's fathers, if a person's great grandfather taught him that it's okay when you see somebody of a different color from you, you should, you know, stay away from them. They're bad, they're evil, they're whatever, right? If that's the same thing his father is going to teach his children, that's the same thing children are going to teach their father. So it's a generational thing, right? And little things like um I watched a video about like how there were economic laws that sort of, when they were building suburban areas, and I think New York or was it New Jersey, when they were building suburban areas, there were laws that are still, they don't hold weight anymore, but they're still there. There are laws that it sort of restricted. It did not allow the houses to be sold. Like it was under the, I guess, the ministry in charge of building and like construction and stuff like that. That they were not allowed to sell those houses to black people and to immigrants, right? And those houses, even after the people who were living in them, if they wanted to resell the house, they're not allowed to resell them to minority groups. And the thing is, the guy explained, I wish I could remember names. The guy explained that those houses, right, those property, they were able to gather enough equity over time, right, for which a person could then send their children to university with that equity, send their children, they can resell the house for like, which is gathered up to, right now, it should, those houses are worth like at least 20 million, right? So if you resell that house, resell that property, and property, it appreciates over time, it never depreciates. So that has enabled those families, those wealthy white families to acquire wealth, right? And even black families who could afford those houses at the time, they were not allowed to resell them or even give those houses to them who could afford, the average black family who could afford those houses. And back then, it was about, I guess in the 1920s, those houses were about $90,000. But now they are at least like $40 million right now. So with those wealth is accumulated over time and has made those families wealthy. So when you talk about systemic oppression and systemic racism does not exist, that's an example, it's a clear example of systemic racism. Because if I as a black man can afford those houses, but I was not, by laws, because of laws, I'm not allowed to afford to buy those houses and live in those houses and live in that neighborhood. Therefore, I would take myself and my family and go and find areas and suburban areas or rural areas or places that would let me live there, right? And those areas are usually not properly developed. They're not safe neighborhoods. They're not places where the resources that are needed for proper living are available, right? So when you talk about systemic oppression, those are clear examples, right? And the place where I'm living or the place where I had to find, I can't accumulate wealth over time in those places, right? So, you know, when you look at the disparity, when you look at how that worked out for white families and how that didn't work out for black families just because of laws, right? Those are more, I guess, over examples of like systemic racism and how it exists and how it existed back then. So that's why I go back to, it's a generational thing. When those laws are put into place and those laws are made to feel like it's okay to, you know, put families, like put minority groups in a certain place while you live in a better place, even though they don't apply in today's world in 2020, those laws back then affected generations of black people, right? It affected generations of black people that have not been able to, they're not able to, they're not able to, you know, you can't, that's why there's a lot of disparity of wealth and income, especially in the States, right? Between, let's say, black people and white people. And when you then take, look, okay, when you want to say, okay, well, Beyonce is rich, Jay-Z is rich. Well, what about those people? Are you better? Are they better than you, or are you better? Do they have two heads? Do they? There are a lot of factors when you want to break that down. You know, there are a lot of factors that go into that. Well, you know.
And I think Beyonce has been very transparent and for the most part about the racism that she experienced growing up with Destiny's Child and how they wanted her to look. And you know, when we look at Destiny's Child and who had the most lightest complexion out of all of them versus Kelly and Michelle, and I forget the fourth one's name.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember, but you know, Beyonce still faced that. And then let's even look to Beyonce's activism and how much backlash I don't think I said that, how much backlash Beyonce got for talking about Black Lives Matter, for performing at the Super Bowl in a Black Panther, Black Panther outfit? I think it was, yeah. And so, you know, this systemic racism, it may not be overt laws, which is what you were talking about and Patrick mentioned, but these still have residual generational impacts as well. I also think to Indigenous communities with residential schools, with the child welfare system, with the 60s scoop, and it's not just, laws made, government made an apology and everything's going to be better. No, as you said, Tokoni, this is generational impacts. This is generational trauma that you're working uphill to heal from.
Most definitely. Especially Indigenous communities, like it's so, like it's heavy. Like when you think about these things, it's really heavy, you know. And it's funny because when I first came to this country, I used to think Canada was such a, you know, no shade to Canadians and all that, but I used to think Canada was such a peaceful nation. You know, they didn't have nothing until I came and I heard about, like, you know, the things they've done to Indigenous communities, and it's sort of like, I was like, wait, what? Really? And it's crazy because a lot of countries and a lot of people and folks in different countries, have this impression of Canada, but they don't know the wrong that has been done to communities within Canada, and to the original people of the land on which Canada is upon. Do you know what I mean? So it's I don't know, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
I think Lucas made a good analogy that we're grateful to be here. We're grateful to be Canadian, but we're not proud. We're not proud of how we got here. We're not proud of our history. And there's things that we can improve on. So,
most definitely.
We could go on for hours and hours, but
most definitely.
I know there's a lot of guys watching right now. Do you have any final messages for the men that are out there watching today or listening right now?
There's a lot of things I want to say. And to be honest, if you want to continue this conversation, I think the best thing you can do, and the best thing for us to have this wonderful conversations, are to just, you know, hit up Alicia or hit me up on Instagram or wherever, and let's, you know, join our Young Men Leading Change program, join the MENding program that we do, and trust me, you will not regret it. You're gonna learn a lot of things that you never really thought about, and would love to include you into the conversation and take in your perspectives, and we can then discuss how we can, you know, be better allies and just be better for ourselves and be better for everybody else around us, and just build relationships between our families, our friends, and, you know. So I'm just gonna say that we as guys have a really important role to play in ending gender-based violence, and with the right people around us and the right conversations and discussions, we can definitely do something about really ending gender-based violence. That's all I'd say.
Amazing. Tokoni, thank you so much for coming on today. You've had a lot of really great comments, a lot of people loving what you are saying. So I appreciate you taking time today. And
Thank you so much for having me.
thank you so much for having this conversation. It's really tough, and I think you brought up a lot of really tough subjects, but really they all come together. And so we appreciate your work with MENding. We appreciate your work with Young Men Leading Change. We can't wait to see how you continue to grow this program, both with the program and in the community. So thank you so much.
Most definitely. Take care. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
Well.